In a little over 2 months from tonight, Kenyans head to the general election, the highlight of it being the presidential transition, this being only the fifth in the country's 59-year history. It is a transition Kenyans are talking about with a mix of eagerness and anxiety. And earlier today, a prayer matter at the National Prayer Breakfast where religious and political leaders all hoped for a smooth and peaceful transition. Now, much was said about this moment, with hopes and prayers for a safe passage through this election to the other side. One thing's for sure, we are in the middle of a transition. And at times like this, things are in a state of flux, feeling like we are suspended in between two worlds, very sure of where we've come from, but somewhat uncertain of the future. And it is at times like this that we would seem to suspend all forms of reason, all forms of good manners, culture, and tradition. That is certainly evident all around us, which is probably why all who were present at the National Prayer Breakfast today made reference to this. From talks about lessening the tension in the country, with some likening the preparation for election as very eerily similar to preparations for war, to ensuring a free and fair election, while yet others spoke of the future with respect to their retirement. And for a moment there was a lull, a welcome one if you like. But, we very quickly restored to factory settings of the unease and restlessness of this moment of electioneering. It was back to the campaign trail and right back to where they'd all left off. The divisions and tensions typically associated with the transitory period we are in now. So don't get me wrong, I totally understand this moment we're in. This is, after all, an election. And an election in and of itself is polarizing. It is a contestation of ideas. You see, an election forces us to choose between ideas and choose persons who will best execute those ideas. We're forced to choose one over the other, one at the exclusion of the next. And so, of course, there's bound to be much debate. There is bound to be division, bound to be a back and forth about different subjects. However, the national prayer today served to remind us that this is a transition. It's a state of flux, not a permanent state, and certainly not the final destination. Think of it as a purgatory of sorts, an in-between type of place. But it's also a dangerous place to be, depending on how we handle this moment, and more importantly, how we handle ourselves during this time. You see, it is during this transition that we want to decide who we are as a people. But all that is said, we are not lost and we're not out in the woods. You see, we've been here before and we've handled these types of transitions before. We all know what to do. As for the voters, listen, process, assess the leaders based on performance of those who come before you and then make your choice. And as for the politicians and all other leaders, their role during this transition is very clear. Let them not paint this transition as if it is due to their magnanimity. You see, we have a constitution that guides us. The term of the presidency is known and limited by law to the 5 years. The judiciary and all other stakeholders and the security sector are well guided by the law on what they should do. So by all means, let's pray for this transition period. Let's talk about it. But also, let's follow the law. That's my take tonight.